All right, guys. So we had yet another one of these absolutely deranged pro-Israel conferences that just took place. This was an event for Israel Hayom, Israel's most read newspaper that is run by the Israeli-American billionaire and Trump megadonor Miriam Adelson, who gave him about $100 million towards his campaign in exchange for him allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. So some of these speakers at this event include Hillary Clinton, and I'll show you a clip from her here in a second, as well as John Fetterman, this John Fetterman, as well as Eric Adams, this Eric Adams, who after failing in his bid to be reelected as the New York City mayor, went on a trip to Israel and said, quote, "I wanted to come back here to Israel to let you know that I served you as the mayor," which is a strange thing to say as a mayor of a major American city. I mean, imagine if he had said this about any other country. He goes over to China and he says, "I served you as the mayor of New York City." Quite a strange thing to say there. You also had Trump UN Ambassador Mike Waltz at this event, Biden official Amos Hochstein at this event, who probably should be viewed up there with guys like Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan in terms of their complicity in Israel's crimes, both in Gaza as well as in Lebanon. And then you also had numerous Israeli officials. So with that set up, let's go ahead and get over to Hillary Clinton, who is complaining about young people getting their information from social media and turning against Israel.
That our students, smart, well-educated young people from our own country, from around the world, where were they getting their information? They were getting their information from social media, particularly TikTok. That is where they were learning about what happened on October 7th, what happened in the days, weeks, and months to follow. That's a serious problem. It's a serious problem for democracy, whether it's Israel or the United States, and it's a serious problem for our young people.
Okay, well, first off, Israel is not a democracy. It's an apartheid state. Second off, she's lamenting here not necessarily that young people are getting their information from social media. What she's really complaining about is that young people aren't taking people like her, the establishment, the elites, the mainstream media gatekeepers, as their primary source of information. That's what she's actually complaining about, is that we are no longer able to control the narrative in a hegemonic way. It's now more dispersed throughout social media platforms. You can come to YouTube, you can watch a channel like mine or many others that are critical of Israel. People can get their information through other streams than the ones that the establishment gatekeepers had wanted to set out for young people.
And it was frankly shocking to me how little the students we were encountering, not only in this class we teach, which is a very large class, international relations about crisis decision making, but students more generally. And that's why I mentioned the social media piece of it, because when you would try to talk to them to engage in some kind of reasonable discussion, it was very difficult because they did not know history, they had very little context, and what they were being told on social media was not just one-sided, it was pure propaganda. And so
Absolutely amazing to hear that what young people are seeing on social media is pure propaganda, but what we've been getting for years in this country from the mainstream media is not pure propaganda. Mostly what we get, I mean, overwhelmingly, whether it's from CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or the New York Times or the Atlantic or whatever else, it is essentially word for word, bar for bar, IDF talking points. So just phenomenal to hear that.
So when you think about how to tell Israel's story, and it's important, it's not just looking internally, it's looking externally, and particularly looking at young people, because, it's not just the usual suspects, it is a lot of young Jewish Americans who don't know the history and don't understand. I was talking to Condi Rice.
So just real quick on the history point there, I think what she's referencing is either the history of the Holocaust and then the lead up to the establishment of Israel. And she's complaining that even young American Jews have turned against Israel. And, many of them are anti-Zionist or they're pro-Palestine or whatever the case may be. The problem here for Hillary is that while, she's kind of right to say you probably shouldn't be getting all of your information from Instagram Reels or just from TikTok, right? You should try to explore beyond that. But the problem for Hillary here is that the more that you do look into the history of Israel and Palestine, whether you're reading books by people like Rashid Khalidi or Ilan Pappé or whoever else the case may be, or whether you're, exploring it through, human rights reports from Amnesty International or Oxfam or whatever else, the more that you do look into that history, the worse that it reflects on Israel. So I don't even think she's necessarily making the point that she thinks she's making there.
And, she said in an interview that I did after the the 20-point plan came out, she and I were on CBS, and she said, you know, when people were chanting from the river to the sea, she would ask the students, what river, what sea? They didn't know. I had the same experience. A lot of the challenge is with younger people. More than 50% of young people in America get their news from social media. So just pause on that for a second. They are seeing short-form videos, some of them totally made up, some of them not at all representing what they claim to be showing, and that's where they get their information.
So look, okay, again, maybe you shouldn't be getting all of your information from TikTok, and I'm sure that if you're watching this video, then you've already gone well a step beyond that, but here's the problem, okay? What has radicalized a more normie audience that doesn't really have the time to read a whole bunch on this topic or to watch long-form videos on this kind of a topic? What they've been witnessing over the last 2 years is a very simple phenomenon. We have seen, young people have seen on their social media feeds, a 2+ year long, endless, live-streamed genocide, where you are seeing children being blown to shreds, where you're seeing Israel bomb schools and mosques and churches and refugee camps and hospitals and hospital employees in double tap strikes, going after journalists, going after human rights organizations, food services. All of this has been live streamed on our social media feeds for 2+ years. It's not a complicated thing to figure out when you're seeing that relentlessly as the Israeli government is boasting about it. You see IDF soldiers who are proudly, you know, posting their war crimes on social media. It's not a difficult thing to figure out. It's not as if young people were tricked by some propagandists on TikTok. It's just that they saw with their own eyes what was happening and they said, I don't support that. That's the problem for Hillary Clinton here. And again, her main issue is that people are going to independent outlets or they're seeing directly on their social media feeds what's happening on the ground in Gaza instead of just taking the word of the establishment gatekeepers like Hillary Clinton. That's her real beef here. Now, we move on because I think that it's a good reminder here of another set of clips that we watched in a previous video that I covered, so I won't play them over here again, but she was basically making similar points to what the former Obama speechwriter who's been doing the podcast circuits recently, Sarah Hurwitz, was saying as she spoke at a different General Assembly conference here. And so in this clip, she explained that, and this is kind of the point that Hillary was just making, that Holocaust education was, in her view, initially designed as anti-Semitism prevention, but it's now being misinterpreted by young people as a universal lesson against genocide, even when the victims aren't Jewish. So she was sort of like upset. She was lamenting that young people, specifically young Jewish Americans, have taken the correct lesson of the Holocaust, right? That genocide is bad, no matter who it happens to, right? Or that fascism is bad, no matter which country is fascistic. She's angry. She's upset that young people learned the real lesson of the Holocaust and didn't just take it as this was a unique one-off situation that happened to Jewish people and it could never again happen to any other group of people, or it could never be perpetrated by a state like Israel. So that was kind of similar to what Hillary Clinton was getting at. And it was also similar to this clip where Sarah was, again, upset about the fact that when she's trying to give her Hasbara talking points, she said, I'm sorry if this is graphic to say, but when I'm trying to make arguments in favor of Israel, I'm talking through a wall of dead children, right? So again, whose fault is it that there is a wall of dead children that you are having to talk through when you're having conversations about Israel? Who created that wall of dead children that so many young people have seen on their social media feeds? I mean, again, this is not a complicated thing. They're telling you, deny what you have witnessed with your own eyes, and instead listen to my talking points. That's the argument that they're making. Now, we also had this clip here. This is the World Jewish Congress president, Ron Lauder, who was encouraging high-profile attendees of this summit in Manhattan to embrace his grand illusions that American politicians like Zoran Mamdani and pundits like Tucker Carlson want to, quote, kill Jews everywhere and are glorifying violence against Jews. I mean, completely unhinged, and as Dropsite says, delusional. And he also went on in this clip. I just want to play the beginning of this clip because it's just kind of amazing to hear someone outline that if you deny people sovereignty, if you deny them safety, if you deny them human rights, that there are going to be, given historical precedent, some issues that arise from that. And he says this not in relation to Palestinians, But in relation to Israel, let's go ahead and watch this, the beginning, like 30 seconds of this clip. It's amazing.
Let me be as clear as I can be. When someone chants from the river to the sea, they are calling for the elimination of the Jewish state. When people have no right to safety, no right to sovereignty, no right to exist, history tells us exactly what happens.
I mean, again, it's amazing, right? He's not wrong. He's just wrong about where he's applying this to. It's a total contradiction and double standard. He's saying when you deny a people sovereignty, self-determination, basic dignity, human rights, safety, and all of that stuff, then history tells us that's going to lead to a dark place. You're right. That's what we've been witnessing Israel do to Palestinians, not just over the last 2 years of this genocide, which is sort of the end stage of this project, but for decades and decades and decades before that, where they have been repeatedly denied any sort of sovereignty or self-determination or fundamental human rights, as we've witnessed over the last 70 years of this project of Zionism. So just phenomenal there, right? To say something so clearly and so concisely and then just not apply it to an entire group of people that you are subjugating. I mean, phenomenal stuff there. Now, we also had this clip where this guy, Elon Carr, the CEO of the Israeli-American Council, essentially gave like a thinly veiled threat-sounding thing here, where he says that Zionists in the United States and around the world should basically use the tactics that Israel has used against Palestinians and against Lebanon and against Syria and Iran. Let's go ahead and watch this clip here.
Was in doubt, and the threats it faced seemed insurmountable. If I had predicted to you then any one of the miraculous things that have happened in the last 2 years, any one of them, pick one: Lebanon, Syria, Hamas, the hostages, Iran, and the U.S. involvement, any one of those things, you would have said that the stress of the moment drove me to delusion. And they all happened in 2 years. And so we are living in a time of miracles and unprecedented opportunities. And the challenge for us here, and with this I'll end because this is key, the challenge for us here is to leverage Israel's successes into our successes and our victories here, because we are one people. Israel's weakness is ours and Israel's strength is ours. And now that Israel has turned the entire geopolitical situation on its head, our job in the diaspora is to leverage those wins and win here. Do to our enemies here what Israel did to its enemies there, and on that, the IAC is focused.
So I'm not exactly sure how else you could interpret what he just said. I mean, he gave specific examples of Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and he says we should do to our enemies here in the United States and around the world what Israel has done to those countries. What has Israel done to those countries? They've bombed them. They've terrorized them. They've slaughtered innocent men, women, and children at a mass industrial scale. I'm not saying that he's necessarily directly calling for that, but I don't really know how else to interpret this. I mean, just an absolutely unhinged thing to say there, as he also, by the way, says that what Israel has done in Gaza is a, quote, miracle, according to him. Now, we also have a couple more clips here. I'll just show you guys one more here from Sarah Hurwitz, because again, she's been doing the podcast circuits, and this one I found to be particularly amazing, where again, she's talking about, protests that have been happening on college campuses, and she's upset about the fact that people who self-identify as Zionists or pro-Israel are criticized by their fellow classmates for doing so. And her explanation here is kind of on the nose in a way.
But I am much more worried about the pervasive, systemic atmosphere on these campuses, like the air kids breathe.
Yeah.
In a lot of campuses, Israel is in the same moral bucket as the KKK and the Nazis, right? So if I said to you, Jonah, look, I'm a Nazi, sure, but I'm a liberal Nazi. That's insane, right? Or, oh, I'm in the KKK, but I don't hate minorities. Like, that's monstrous. Like, come on, we're not going to have a conversation about that. And that's what I think a lot of students on campus hear when a Jewish student says, well, look, I'm a Zionist, I'm a liberal Zionist, I care about Palestinian rights. It's like Israel is now so evil, so untouchable that there's no point of contact you can have with it, just like there's no point of contact you can have with the KKK or Nazis.
It's like she's so close to getting it, but yet so far, right? She goes on further in this clip to say that she's spoken to some students who, want to wear an I Heart Israel shirt on campus and say that they would get pushback from their classmates. And, similarly to her saying that they would identify as liberal Zionists, and people would say that's sort of a contradiction. It's like, yeah. If you were to wear on a college campus right now a shirt that says I Heart Germany, right? Nobody's really going to bat an eye at that kind of a shirt. But if you were going to wear a shirt that says I Heart Germany in the 1940s, people might say, hey man, what the fuck? That's not cool, right? If you're repping an I Heart the country that is currently committing a historic atrocity, people are probably going to give you some looks, right? That's not necessarily just a baseline normal thing to do as we're witnessing a full-blown genocide unfold in front of our eyes. And to her liberal Zionist being compared to like a liberal KKK member or a liberal Nazi, yeah, you're starting to get it a little bit here. There is a contradiction between being a liberal and supporting a decades-long settler colonial project that at its foundation displaced hundreds of thousands of people, killed tens of thousands of people, and in the subsequent decades, there was endless occupation, there was an apartheid structure that was put into place, and now we're seeing the end result of this project, which is a full-blown genocide in Gaza and an ongoing ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. All of those things are contradictory to what most people understand as liberal values. So yeah, that is a contradiction. I guess because you have such a deeply, dehumanizing view towards Palestinians, you don't see that as a contradiction, but the contradiction is there. And maybe one of these podcasts she'll wake up and see the contradiction that's there. But final thing here, I won't play this clip because we've heard too much from her, but there was another one here where this kind of puts into perspective her view on Palestinians and the founding of Israel and why she maybe doesn't understand where young people are coming from on this. So here was Sarah Hurwitz on a different podcast saying that she went looking for Israel's original sin. She says, I felt a lot of anxiety about Israel. I hate to say this now, but on some deep level, I thought there was something fundamentally problematic about Israel's founding, that if I did enough research, I'd find it and I wouldn't be able to defend it. She says she feels embarrassed about this instinct now because after her research, she concluded that Israel is completely unexceptional in this founding. Apparently, in her research, she didn't stumble across, as Dropsite points out here, that an estimated 15,000 Palestinians were killed in the 1948 Nakba by Zionist militias that later formed the Israeli army, and more than 750,000, around 80% of the Arab population of what became Israel, were forcibly displaced. She said, we need to normalize Israel's founding for young people. So again, it's like, yeah, most young people are going to look at this history and say, yeah, there's something fucked up about that. Right? There's something deeply fucked up about that. She says, no, we need to normalize this. This kind of settler colonial project, ethnic displacement and the creation of an ethno-state, that's normal. We should normalize this for young people. It's not going to happen, okay? Now moving on, because we had another clip here from Ben Shapiro. This was at a different conference that took place about a week ago, and here he is going after Miss Rachel, obviously the children's entertainer who makes like these kids like music videos and whatever. She's sort of, I think, like the Mr. Rogers of our time. And here's Ben Shapiro complaining about her existence and saying he's developed some sort of an alternative in order to push children to be pro-Israel and pro-America.
And so one of our goals was, once we had built up a big enough audience, could we start to broaden our mission to include things like entertainment content that was going to shape people's values from the time that they were young? So, for example, we have a children's programming unit called Bent Key that has several 100,000 subscribers, and it embodies sort of classical Judeo-Christian values for kids, where you're not worried that you're going to leave your 5-year-old in front of a TV and suddenly Miss Rachel's going to be lecturing them about Palestine. That's not going to be a concern if you watch our sort of content. So,
I mean, listen, guys. This was mild, but I have seen a relentless stream of attacks against Miss Rachel over the last year plus at this point that she has been advocating for Palestinians. It's not the only issue, by the way, that she's focused on. She talks about children who are going through, immense suffering around the world in many other situations as well. But they have tried to make her out to be like a literal member of Hamas. If you guys remember, even the New York Times, I say that as if it's surprising that the New York Times would ask this kind of a question, but they did an interview, or they asked a question to Miss Rachel, and it was, are you being funded by Hamas? Like, they actually asked her that question, right? As there has been this relentless stream of attacks against her, smearing her as anti-Semitic, smearing her as pro-terrorism or whatever, literally because she stood up and she had the audacity to say, Palestinian children deserve to live. Stop killing them. That's about the extent of what she has said on this issue. And for that, she gets smeared and attacked and demonized. Absolutely disgusting. Now, a couple more things here. We also had Barry Weiss, the obviously the owner of the genocide denying free press outlet, recently took over at CBS News. And as part of her grand plan here, and in pushing Gen Z away from the anti-Israel direction, she says that Gen Z needs to start listening to more charismatic voices like Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz. Nearly 90-year-old Alan Dershowitz is who Gen Z needs to be listening to. The guy who was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. I mean, kind of poor timing on this suggestion with all of the Epstein news that's been floating around. Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, the same charismatic Alan Dershowitz who, on your outlet, the Free Press, just recently did this debate where it got less than 1,000 views on the video. This is the guy who young people should be listening more to. It's like, it's okay to trot out, your charismatic, young, pro-Israel person if that's what you want to do in order to try to win young people back. But like, could you give us something better than this? Something better than Alan fucking Dershowitz? No, I mean, this is their star, I guess, in this equation. Now, a couple more things here just to quickly wrap up the video. I wanted to give you guys some actual real updates on where we're at in Gaza as sort of this slower form of genocide has continued to unfold. So here from Dropsite News, Jeremy Scahill on some of the latest. They say, on the heels of an unprecedented UN Security Council resolution endorsing President Donald Trump's Gaza agenda on November 17th, the U.S. and its allies are now trying to move forward with the second phase of their plan to colonize Gaza and turn it into a hub of international investment. The aim is to use an international force which will operate under Trump's so-called Board of Peace as a means to completely disarm the Palestinian resistance in Gaza and impose an imperial tutelage on the Gaza Strip. And while it says that Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza, the plan bestows sweeping agency on Israel and is filled with ambiguities that could keep Israeli forces indefinitely entrenched in Gaza. They say Israel has repeatedly violated the Gaza ceasefire agreement, which went into effect on October 10th. It conducts strikes in Gaza on a daily basis and has killed more than 350 Palestinians, at least 136 of them children. I mean, this is more children that were killed on October 7th. Imagine if Hamas over the last couple of months had killed 136 Israeli children. Do you think that the U.S. mainstream media would be considering this to be a ceasefire? No. This is, again, just sort of the baseline dehumanization that Palestinians are expected to accept at face value. 350 killed, and this is somehow a functioning ceasefire that's ready to move on to the next phase. But they got a quote here saying, more than a month after the ceasefire was announced and all living Israeli hostages were released, Israeli authorities are still committing genocide against Palestinians in the occupied Gaza Strip, charged Amnesty International in a briefing on November 27th, and Israel is continuing to deliberately inflict the conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction without signaling, without signaling any change in their intent. And then final things here, they say Israel refuses to allow the delivery of the agreed upon levels of food, medicine, and other life essentials to the enclave, and still has not reopened the Rafah border crossing with Egypt, although there was this report from the New York Times that Israel is saying that they're going to open the Rafah border, but only for Palestinians to leave, not for anything to be brought in to Gaza, but just for Palestinians to leave and never to be allowed to return. And they continue here saying that Israeli forces have penetrated beyond the so-called yellow line or the agreed upon positions where it would redeploy its forces as a part of the exchange of captives. And Israel, meanwhile, is still occupying more than half of Gaza, and it continues to engage in mass demolition operations throughout eastern Gaza, razing more than 1,500 buildings on the ground since October 10th. And Israel is building up military infrastructure there for what officials have said will be an indefinite presence. And then finally, they say U.S. officials have spoken of erecting a so-called green zone, which they would use to entice Palestinians to leave western areas of Gaza, where the vast majority of them are, with the promise of food, medicine, and shelter, effectively creating two cantons. And in the area not under Israeli occupation, analysts predict that Israel will conduct regular military strikes in the name of crushing Hamas, while denying the remaining population sufficient food and medicine, with a quote here saying they will continue killing Palestinians, hoping that this will instigate a massive expulsion or a massive displacement of Palestinians. We will just have a low-level genocide. Instead of having 100 to 200 Palestinians killed every day, it will be 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, depending on how Israelis feel that morning. So this is sort of the baseline of where we're at right now. We have indefinite Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip. We have Trump and his board of peace with guys like Tony Blair that are effectively going to control Gaza in sort of a colonial sort of setup, where they continue to push for Palestinians to leave Gaza. They will continue to put a stranglehold on Palestinians that are not under direct Israeli occupation. They will continue to try to push for the complete disarmament of Palestinians so that there is no form of the capability to resist this kind of an occupation. And then they will move forward with international sort of investment to create whatever Donald Trump's sort of Mar-a-Lago envisioned future is for the Gaza Strip. So extremely bleak reality that we're witnessing on the ground, including, again, the daily killing of Palestinians. One of the most recent examples of this, as posted here by the IDF, I'll read their version of it, and then we'll get to the community note here on what actually happened. They said, X mark ceasefire violation. IDF troops identified 2 suspects who crossed the yellow line, carried out suspicious activities, and approached the troops in southern Gaza, posing an immediate threat. The Israeli Air Force eliminated the suspects to remove the threat. The suspects were children aged 11 and 8 years old who were reportedly going to try to look for wood to use for fire. 11 and 8-year-olds. And this is how the IDF describes them, right? Posing an immediate threat, carrying out suspicious activities, and that required that the Israeli Air Force eliminated the suspects. These were the children in question. So this is just sort of the daily kind of killing, murder that we are witnessing in Gaza on a daily basis. Final things here. We had the convicted felon and police minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who promoted the soldiers who were filmed shooting and killing 2 Palestinians after they had surrendered. I can't even show you guys this video because it will absolutely be taken down by YouTube, but you can get the gist of it here in this, this image. You had 2 Palestinians who were inside behind this wall here. They came out, they put their hands up, they fully surrendered, and then the Israeli troops proceeded to execute them in a complete, verifiable, on-camera war crime here, a murder, an execution, whatever you want to call it. And in response to that, again, the police minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, praised them and then promoted them for doing so. Final last thing here, because as we're being told by many of these defenders of Israel in these conferences, that Israel's not an apartheid state, we have this from Haaretz, an Israeli outlet. Netanyahu's coalition is preparing a bill aimed at restricting Arab parties' ability to run for Israel's parliament next election. Definitely not an apartheid state. So, long video here, guys. Credit to you if you stuck to the end. That's all I got for you today. Obviously, I'll have continued coverage tomorrow. I don't know, where these people that go to these conferences think that this is going to head in the future, but you've lost young people. Okay, you've lost an entire generation. In fact, you've lost a majority of the Democratic coalition, a majority of independents, arguably, and you're getting up there with the Republican coalition as well. We're not coming back to Israel. We're not going to support Israel. We're not going to support candidates who take money from the Israel lobby, who endorse genocide, who want to send weapons to Israel. It's just not going to happen. So in committing this historic atrocity that we've all witnessed over the last 2 years, you've doomed yourself in the long term. So that's just the reality. Again, I'll wrap up here for you guys. If you made it to the end, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We're trying to make our way up to 100,000 subscribers. So all of that is deeply appreciated. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying